Hello, and welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duville, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who'd like to thank his fans for their undying support, and the people of Gotham, who he'll be seeing very, very soon.
Tim Longo.
Yep.
You keep equating me to the Joker.
Well, you know, as you pointed out, you've dressed up as the Joker more times than you've dressed up as Batman. So
that's true. I guess I did mention that.
So you kind of, yeah, I'm running out of them. There's actually not a lot of good quotable lines like the.
The Joker's got all of them. I think. I feel.
Yeah, he's got the best lines for sure. I mean, there's some good stuff that's in the recordings, and we'll talk about things like that. But it's not as quotable, you know. And of course, you only hear it once. Whereas, you know, if you die a bunch, you'll hear, you know, Joker come in and give you his salute many times. So
right.
It's a whole thing.
Well, I like how they change those who comes in to taunt you based on where you are sometimes, like
right, and what you're doing.
Scarecrow will come in if you die.
All of them, any of them, will come and mock you. Even the Riddler, which is very funny.
Oh, I haven't had a Riddler come in yet. When
I might be confusing that one with Arkham Origins.
Well, you know, you could be right. I don't know. I haven't had him come in this one yet.
I don't think he's modeled in this one, so I don't think he actually was in this one.
I think you meet him in City. I think one of the side things.
You meet him in Arkham Origins for sure, or you can if you're doing that stuff, you can go.
Oh, maybe I'm getting that mixed up then. I thought he was in City the other.
I think he's in City.
Part of it is you get to find like he's really
not the Riddler yet in Arkham Origins. He has no costume.
Oh, he's Edward Nigma still.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's neat. That's a good idea. I forgot about that. I can't remember. I didn't finish that game, but I can't remember it. I guess I just need to dress up like Batman more is what this means. So
yeah, clearly. Yeah, absolutely.
I'll get on that.
You can put on your Batman pajamas. So
yeah. Mm-hmm. I saw that. Brett made sure I saw that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I couldn't help myself and I had to put it in the company Discord. Our company, what do we use? Slack.
Slack. It's now
too many
an emoji. Yeah. Great.
Too many things. Yep. Speaking of too many things, let's talk about the gadgets. You know, maybe not too many things, I suppose. It's weird, especially having played some of the later games, how untied to the story they are, and so how unnecessary a number of them feel. Like there's some that you have to have. Like you have to have the bat claw. You know, you have to have the line, whatever it is, the zip line. You have to have the cryptographic sequencer. Are there any
explosive?
Others?
The gel.
Basically, you need the gel. You have to have the gel. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, it's not. I was going to say it's on the 4 cardinal, but it's the
and batarangs on a cardinal.
Yeah, but you don't need the batarangs.
You need it in. There's one case where you need to.
Oh, you need it for Bane. I guess you
you need it for those. You need it for Zaz. You need it for Bane, the mutants and things. So
yeah. So the 4 cardinals, and then
and for Croc,
the decryptor thing.
Right, the decryptor is in like the bottom left or something.
Yeah.
And then I think bottom right. The bottom left is the remote controlled batarang, maybe. Upper right is the sonic batarang, which I got it. You know, I maxed out the whole tree as far as that stuff goes, all the upgrades, and I was like, I don't see why I would use this. Like,
yeah, you got to really want to.
I think there may be a trophy for it, and you want to, like, you know, draw somebody off and send them to a trap or something like that. I think it's something like that's in there. Like, if you want to get a trophy,
well, there's
achievement for it, you know,
there's the gel that is proximity trigger,
right.
So you could put that and then put a sonic, and you could probably stay in one
throw a batarang at it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and
that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so it's fooling with the sandbox basically.
Right.
But yeah, I mean the gadgets, like the core gadgets. Yeah, I mean it's interesting to compare it to the other games because I think, you know, they didn't know. It seems like they didn't quite know what they had with this game yet. And then my memory of City is that, you know, some of these optional ones become, you said this in pre-show, they become part of the critical path.
Right.
where you need them to progress. And so they already have the mechanic. It seems to make sense, and they're fairly fun most of the time. So it seems to make sense of, like, leverage them more, get the player to learn how to use them more in more interesting areas.
Also have them as a reward, right? To
Yeah.
have the opportunity to have more, more stuff happen. I mean, there's a lot about this game that has really good rewards, and we'll talk about those as well. But just being able to have a new gadget is kind of a reward in and of itself. And it's another area where in the, RPGification, they can have options to make it personal to your experience, right? So there's that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And because it's interesting. I don't remember. I feel like did Origins, did it have just a flat structure like that, or does it have a skill tree with
There are dependencies and chains of things there. It's not a pure tree. It's kind of a weird thing because it depends on what gadgets. Like, there's sort of like, well, now that you have in that game, the special thing is the glue grenade.
Does that too. Yeah.
This one does do it a little bit, because there are some things where it's like, oh, you have the batarang, you can get two batarangs, three batarangs, right? Sort of thing. Yeah. And then, of course, the health upgrades are sequential, right? Yeah. So it doesn't diagram it that. It presents it as flat, but if you go to choose them, they do a little bit better job of indicating those dependencies in, at least in Origins. I'm sure it's the same in City and Night. I don't think they really knew what they were doing with that exactly. I mean, I think they made the right choice to include them, but I don't know if they completely thought through the presentation, and kind of made sense of it. Oh, we'll just have a bunch of things that you can get, right? Sort of is the feel. But then either they ran out of ideas, but some things just lend themselves naturally to be broken up. Like, you're going to make you twice as tough. Like, that's like a big step. So doling it out in 25% at a time, bits for health or armor or whatever makes sense. Okay, yeah, we'll kind of divide that up a little bit. Whereas getting it in one big go would feel like just overbalanced. There'd be no reason to choose anything else until you had that one. So when you have 4 of them, it's like, well, maybe I'll do one of these and then one to do more damage, and then come back to getting more health or whatever. You kind of make more of an interesting choice for the player.
Yeah. I mean, it's the presentation of it, but also the structure of it is the simplest version of this kind of thing. And I think, as a segue to one of our topics we wanted to hit, I'll just hit it now because we're already kind of talking about it. The RPGification of games was going on for years before this game, and it's still going on, et cetera, et cetera. But there really wasn't a lot of superhero games that were dealing with this overtly. There was sort of a bit of I would say, a stigma to superhero games up to this point, where the assumption was that the superhero was already kind of at their peak. So why have any RPG literal XP? I even remember when this game came out and there was this concept of XP for things that you did. It was a bit jarring at first, because you're like, well, why is Batman getting XP? It's so weird. But there's a reason that RPGification has been happening for so many years, because it works. People like it. It's okay. Batman learns too. And, why doesn't he already have the zip line or whatever? Or why doesn't he already have as much armor as he could bring? It's a video game. It's like, it doesn't matter. It's like, you want that kind of stuff.
You have lots of good things, right? You have rewards. You have opportunity for player choice, right? And player leaning into their style of play. I mean, you and I both play the same way there, where we like to beef up the health because we know we're going to, be learning the fighting system a little. That's going to take a little longer for us. And so we'd rather have the, less learning through failure and more learning through being tougher, and just having.
But then the second, what's after that though? What's your next, the next thing you choose? Because I have a specific thing that I do after that.
I usually do health and combat first in the Batman games, and then I started at a certain point. I guess it was after we talked last. I was like, oh right, you do this camera thing with the Riddler. I was waiting for an unlock for whatever that was. Because it is in some games, right? It's like more like, right. You unlock a gadget and now you can do the thing, right? So I just at that point I was like, oh well, I'm just going to go and do all of those. I've done basically all the ones in the areas that we visited because I'm almost done the game. I was holding off so I could finish for next week for our takeaways and finish episode. But yeah, I do basically that. But then I was like, oh well, these open up more things. Like, so I want to open up more things generally as fast as I can as well, because I don't want to necessarily have to retrace and retrace and retrace.
Yeah. That's the next thing after health or things like that. The next thing I do is in other RPGs. It's like, and if it gives me more dialogue options or something that gives me more content essentially. And so in this case, it was like upgrading the decryptor thing or the whatever that thing is called,
cryptographic sequencer.
That gives you that you can do from a distance, gives you more range.
Oh right,
I knew that would allow me to hack into other stuff that is inaccessible to me, right, or what have you. So, although I haven't figured out what, and I don't think anything is still yet to be revealed to me. How do you do gel like up high if you need to shoot gel? How do you get the explosive gel on a wall that is above you?
Generally, you can't.
So it must be coming from the other direction then.
Either it's coming from the other direction. Oh, actually, there is a late Batcave edition you don't have yet.
Okay. As I seem to remember you could do that, but I was like,
yes, you can. There's something for the grapnel gun where you get multiple attachments. So it's just another way to open things, right?
Yeah. It's all locked. It's just keys that are keys.
Yeah. So and it's there at the point that you get it. There's like one thing that's critical path. Whenever you get it, there's one thing that you need to do, and then but after one or two or whatever, and then it's just okay. Now you can get more Riddler stuff or whatever. More whatever. It's more of the
because I see them all around. And in fact, the first thing I tried to do when I got the grapnel was shoot those because I thought I had a memory of shattering them. Yeah, that way. But
right, no, there are multiple attachment pull down. And so it's like the bigger ones and things like that. And yeah, that's right. There, I was thinking actually of Origins where there's a zip line. It's still attached. It's actually authored attach points in the world, but you can use it as a speed zip line into a wall. So that's what I was thinking. I was like, you can swing from it and then jump through the wall at the end.
Through it.
I was like, how do you do that? But no, in this case, it must be right after Croc that you have to go back to the Batcave.
You do go,
something like that.
Yeah, I mean, this formula from this particular game is so strong, and because you played Origins at the same time, you can just see, like, from a game development standpoint, because it's such a strong foundation, and because they got the opportunity to keep making them, you can just see the things that you would improve or change or iterate on, right? Like, okay, just how the progression would go. And when you play City, you're like, yes, my memory of it is like, this is to me, City there was an aspect of City that was the game that I wanted Arkham to be even more of. It was too big, I think, and it was too sprawling, because I think Arkham benefits from how tight it is. It's a really, I think, elegantly tight game in that way. So taking the content bloat out of City, the mechanics, the feel, like the way you use the cape, like there's times when I'm floating in Arkham Asylum when I want to be floating like I'm floating in City, where you can do like the updraft and like really feel like you're flying and stuff, and use the grapple more effectively throughout the city and stuff. But otherwise it's just, And then you're mentioning some of these things that they add on to in Origins and stuff, which is a different team altogether. You
Yeah,
still
you're
have the
definitely
foundation.
building on City. I checked the dates, and it was 2011, 2013. I think they're using the same
Yeah,
foundation, the
yeah.
same city, right? And just doing different things with it. It's the same tech and a lot of the same
Hmm.
landmarks, and even being in it, I was like, this does feel like a Gotham I've been to before. I mean, it's probably not exactly the same. They may have moved some landmarks around and things like that. But a lot of things looked familiar. It had the same look anyway, and there were
It's in the
definitely
snow, right?
there were
It's like it's a
bridges
different
too. Yeah,
season.
it's Christmas. Um,
That's right. That's
it's
right.
Christmas. It's literally Christmas Eve. Yeah, it was good. It was fun. It was weird having like all these origin stories after or during playing Arkham Asylum, where I'm
Yeah,
getting them kind of in different ways.
yeah.
So it's very interesting in that regard. Um, yeah, so let's I guess move on to the um, some of the ways you're getting the RPG results. One of them that you brought in was like turning Easter eggs into to XP, which I thought was
Yeah.
a funny way of putting it.
Well, it's like, I mean, I call them Easter eggs. It's not. It's maybe, Easter eggs tend to be quite a bit more hidden than these are. But I think about, like, we've been comparing it to BioShock quite a bit. And one thing that we talked about with BioShock and games like it that are that really like effective at visual storytelling and environmental storytelling is, and we talk about it with Bethesda games too, is the sort of like setting a scene in a space that tells a story, right? So just by being there, and gives you a lot more bang for your buck with just this little scene that somebody crafted. That's essentially a static scene.
Right.
And in BioShock, they did a great job of that, of telling the story of Rapture and the sort of the disintegration of the society and all of that stuff. And so you get these little vignettes where you're like, oh, what happened there? Oh, what happened there? Oh, what's that story? And then we'll talk about the audio files in a bit too. But of course, in a Batman game, especially as a fan, and especially with such a limited focused scope in a good way, Batman is such a rogues gallery of villains. For as a fan, I want at least some mention or just nod to some of these characters that I know I'm not going to get to see in this game because it is such a focused story. And they pick their battles there, which I would too, and I think it's a good call. But they could have just as easily, for instance, Calendar Man Cell, they could have just as easily just put that there as something that only the fans would probably notice or find, or even fans might not put two and two together. But they made a riddle out of it, and they made a collectible out of it, and then you have to go and point at it and take a picture of it. Or like the one that surprised me because I forgot that you don't fight him in this. I think it's in City you fight him, is Mr. Freeze's cell
Right.
in that one section where you're like, the riddle is something about ice, and I'm like, wow, man, I don't remember Mr. Freeze being in this game. And then I go there and it's just a cell with ice on the outside.
Yeah,
You're like,
covered in
oh,
it.
he's probably in there.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you take a
yeah.
picture and you're like, oh, Mr. Freeze. I know that guy. Or like Penguin's stuff in that case, which I don't know I don't know why they have that and where Penguin is, or Catwoman's for the same thing. So there's these little nods that they could have as easily just put in there for visual storytelling for somebody who's really observant, but they made a collectible out of them. And then if you do them, you get quite a bit of XP for doing them. And it kind of, for me, again, as a fan, I'm checking boxes as well of like, oh yeah, Catwoman, got it. Penguin, got it. Mr. Freeze, got it. So it's kind of a neat, or like the Tea Party was a great one in the botanical garden. It's like,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
oh yeah, there's a bad hat, and so
Yeah.
just these little nods, but they reward you. It's like, why not just give you XP for taking a picture of them? It's like so simple, and I feel gratified as a fan. Yeah, I didn't get to talk to the character, but it's like, of course, this is Arkham Asylum. Of course, they have all these villain artifacts because this is where they put them. Um, and then occasionally, like Poison Ivy, you get to meet them or whatever, and they're here. So, or Croc. So Anyway, I just thought, as far as the RPGification, and of course that relates to motivating you to want to unlock more stuff. So even if you're just doing it for the XP, there's value. But for me, there's value in both XP and unlockables as well as lore and, being a nerd. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I was actually thinking about it. What are there, like 6 villains here? So there's Joker, Harley, Bane, Killer Croc, Scarecrow,
Zaz.
He's pretty
minor,
quick, pretty
yeah.
minor. I think the Batman movies I like the least. I mean, there were the Schumacher ones, but one of the other things that was a fault of them was they had too many villains.
Too many, yeah. They
Right?
didn't have enough space.
This is like a 10 to 12 hour game, and that's one villain for every 2 hours by my count.
Yeah.
And it's the right amount. And I think
Economical.
It's economical, but it's enough space for each one of them to be a full on villain with their own problem, their own space you need to deal with, their own whatever, their own goals. Harley's a little minor in that way too, because she sticks around longer. First, you got to sneak up on her, I guess, with Gordon, and then later you've got to fight all the thugs she sends after you, and you lock her up.
I think she gets a bad rap in this game, though.
Yeah,
overall,
no.
Yeah. I think she could have been handled better,
but it's a good amount of, it's enough space for all of them to breathe and feel like they're a real part of the story, right? And
yeah.
and
then Joker's ever present, right? Like,
right,
he's kind of
always there
between all of them,
exactly.
And then it makes for a perfect end villain. The last thing you want is your end villain to be a surprise or like not fulfilling. You want to be reminded who your target is the whole time, and I think it's just masterfully done as far as that goes.
Yeah,
for the Joker.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Yeah, I mean, I think actually that might be the complaint I have now that I think about it with the larger games, is that there's too much space.
Yeah.
And not enough villains, right? In the sense that they don't each have sort of a big, the sort of their sections don't kind of run naturally into each other because there's so many other things to do. With lots of combatants everywhere. Here, I think actually every, I actually commented last time, I think that they may respawn, but I think actually every enemy is bespoke. In terms of placement, that they don't actually spawn. You go back to an area that you've knocked out everybody, they don't come back.
Right, you might be right. Too. Yeah. Well, you've been doing backtracking, so
I've done a lot of backtracking, and those spacers are very lonely at that point. But it's also not in a bad way.
Well,
they're not, because I'm in there doing the other activity, right? I mean, I didn't want to go back and fight more.
No, you're Batman on Arkham Asylum, and you're cleaning house.
Yeah.
So like the house should stay clean because you've just cleaned this whole building, with the exception of the state changes, like the plants or something. But I think that's a good thing. Yeah, you want to feel like you're accomplishing. I think that's one downside to the respawning model, is you don't, especially as Batman, you don't feel like you're actually doing what you should be doing. You're supposed to be fighting crime. You're not.
Right.
You're not supposed to. It's not supposed to be like endless. I can never win. If I go back to which in City, I guess.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think he. I don't know. That's kind of my thing with Batman now. It's like I don't think he's making things better.
No. I agree. It's more of the sense of it.
Right.
But
I mean, in a game form, you want it.
Yeah, he's a fundamentally flawed superhero. Like he will never win because he's a psychopath himself. I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I'm
a fan.
I mean, he's rich, right? So he's got to be a psychopath. Like, I mean, it's
yeah. Which I do. We didn't talk about in pre-show, but I do want to mention the second Scarecrow vignette.
Oh yeah, I mean, we can do it right now since you bring it up.
Though I was going to say before we do that, what you were just talking about the backtrack. What was the point? The other thing about my memory of City, to your point on the space and the villains, is like, it's the I made the joke in pre-show too that this is the Star Wars of the series, and in that the first movie, Star Wars, was so one of the reasons it was so good, even though Empire was ultimately, I think, better in some ways. But Star Wars is such a class is because they had so many constraints, right? We've talked about, I think, this before on the podcast, probably years ago, and it forced them to be creative in different ways, and they had to be economical and clever, and then as you get to the prequels where it's like unlimited, do whatever you want, right? Megalomania. And in City, it is very much sort of be careful what you wish for, of like, oh sure, open world, it's huge, you can do whatever. But to your point on the villains, I remember in City, because other than the main story villains, which is like Joker, I think Two-Face, I think you did
Definitely
have to fight
Two-Face.
Freeze.
I think Scarecrow as well. Again,
maybe, yeah.
I feel like there's a scene in a diner where you're like
Strange and Ra's al Ghul.
yeah.
Those were the few that you had to fight, but there were a lot of the other ones that I wanted to experience. Like Zaz was back in there.
There's a Calendar Man overlay on the world.
Yeah, but it's like it's opt in, right? So it's like if I want to go get the Riddler, or if I want to go get Zaz, I choose to go do that kind of in whatever time I want. So it diminishes it somewhat because he's just kind of wherever he is, and I got to go find him, and it's like it's not in Arkham, those are all threaded together.
Exactly.
And the Easter eggs are fine, but they're not like a dominant thing. It's like a little throwaway, but those writ large also kind of just get sort of drowned out by the noise of the whole thing, which is an interesting problem,
right.
Especially it's like a different kind of production problem at that point.
Yeah, one of the things we talked about in pre-show is just the economy of the way the space is reused and mechanics are twisted or added to in small ways that mess with the systems.
That's a huge thing for me. I think that's one of the greatest things about the game.
Yeah, it really, really adds up. I mean, we've been talking about one layer, which is sort of the various riddles and things like that, going and finding a question mark somewhere in the environment. Those are always the most annoying one because I try to play without the detective mode on all the time. So I often am like in a spot and just going, what am I missing? And then I turn on detective mode. I'm like, oh, I'm missing the invisible ink question mark thing. Like, what a weird, those are maybe not my favorite because they're just kind of like, well, what? They put a thing.
You're not superior. You're not of a superior intellect then, says the Riddler. Like,
okay, you spray painted some weird ink that only I can see in my special goggles.
You're just making excuses now because you're not as smart as him.
Well, I do have all of them.
I'm just taunting you like he taunts.
Keep going. I can turn off this podcast at any time.
And then I would win.
There would be how many hours a week do I spend on this? You've already won. The way that the plants then add to the game and just like they sprout up all over the place. But one of the things you mentioned in pre-show that I hadn't really considered in this way was just the augmentation of both the guards now having these weird collars that make noises, and then when their heart's slow, or I'm not sure how those things work, but whatever, they basically alert guards, so you knock a guy out and it's kind of draw attention. They of course do the mix stuff that I talked about before, was more guys with guns or whatever. They kind of increase the intensity in that way. So even if you're coming back to a space, which you do a couple times, and there's new groups of guys there, it does feel different. And then you mentioned the gargoyles. And there's a particular room that I was in with the gargoyles with the explosives. So you actually have to move to a ground and cover game a lot more. Like the floor panels or whatever you can get under. There's not a lot of them there. So you are like getting into detective mode, figuring out where they are, trying to separate them. That might have been a good place for a sonic batarang if I had it at that time. I think it was the last one I got, because it might have been helpful to like draw them into locations and things like that. But that reuse of space for a relatively small team, as we talked about, I mean, it's just, you see the yes and everywhere. I mean, like, yes, we could, but what if we also did? And what if we did? And what if we did, but we didn't grow the real scope of the game? Because those things are fairly easy to do. Those minor, relatively speaking. I mean, it's not like adding a whole another landmass of space that you have to fill.
Yeah, exactly. And
often,
oftentimes they introduce these new, like the gargoyles, that's in a room you've been in before.
Exactly.
And it's a elaborate room that's well designed. There's a lot of options. But if you just stick around on the gargoyles again the next time, it's going to feel samey when you play it.
Right.
They can switch the guards up and maybe make them harder, but these simple changes really mix things up for the player, and you're forced, like you said, to use different mechanics you may not have used before, which are all quite good. So it's not like you're going to have a bad time. It may not be your preference, but it's not like it's going to be not fun. So it forces you, like you said, to play the ground game or figure out how to use corners better or your gadgets. And
yeah, I mean you probably didn't blow up all the walls in there. So now that you've got the proximity-based explosive gel, you probably can use that a little bit more or whatever. I mean, you have a lot of opportunities. It makes it really, really nice in there.
Yeah, it's just I feel like I'm overusing the word masterclass in this episode, but I do think that it is, for an economically focused team that's really focused, finding really clever development solutions for kind of a sandboxiness of the game to just augment these things. Like you said, you mentioned just introducing one new type of slightly different kind of character into a fight, and the fight changes what inputs you're having to make, right? Because this guy has a electric rod or whatever. So you're like, okay, now I have to do this instead, and be aware. And changing your patterns up, because it's like, it's a really, the core beginning, the first quarter of the game is very, very good. But if the whole game was just that same quarter 3 more times, the game wouldn't be as good, and you need to push the player, especially as they're gaining more options in the gadgets and moves and stuff. You want them to use those. So, but yeah, I mean, when I had forgotten that they did this, because I really like the gargoyle rooms are probably my favorite parts of the games as far as gameplay goes. No surprise there. But when I got to that room and they had the scene where they put the explosives on the gargoyles, I remembered, of course, that them doing that, and then I thought to myself, that's just brilliant. It's just like such a simple thing. And now I go into this room again, having to rethink my strategy, which is but not feeling stuck. Like I have to rethink my strategy, but it's not like I didn't have other options, right. So it was okay.
Yeah, you have a lot of tools at that point, and you can use them, and you've learned a lot of things. Like you've had. I mean, it's one thing that one of the things I think that the larger games do is that they have more opportunities for combat add-ons with the gadgets. Like you get this glue grenade, you can use that in combat. You can use the grapnel. You can use like everything. There's just like combinations of they're chords basically, I guess is what people, they don't like us to say combos, Tim. They're chorded inputs of like, oh, I'm going to hold L2 and R2 and this is going to happen. I'm going to hold L2, I'm going to tap L2 and then later tap it again and this is going to happen. That I can put gel on the ground and explode, and it'll actually tell me how many guys are near so that I can do it at the best time. I can glue a guy. I can, in Origins you end up with these electroshock gloves. And, so at a certain point, it's like, okay, now I can really beat up everybody because I can turn those things on. And now I can punch everybody because I can punch through even the shield guys or whatever. So like they really change up. They're sort of like in this first game, they're thinking, how much can we put on the player without overloading him with options? And then in the future games, they're like, well, they probably played the first one. Let's really, let's really put some more
Right.
stuff in there, And I find it hard, even playing all through Origins. I found it hard. I had to remind myself constantly, and only typically if I was failing a fight would I do them.
Yeah.
Because except for the gloves, because that just makes a fight go faster. But it's just 20 guys around you, and it's like, oh man, I need to do a lot of crowd control. Like, there's a lot I have to do here. I have to swing the cape. I gotta, leap across far distances. So I really have to be literally on the stick, as it were. So it's a lot more to manage, and you can watch expert level playing in hard mode or whatever the impossible modes of later games, and they use everything. They never get touched, and they use every gadget, and they're constantly doing things. And I watch, and I'm like, yeah, I'll never be that good. It's just, that's not in the cards for me.
Yeah.
So
yeah, depth of that combat system, making the player feel like they can be a master of something, but not requiring it.
Yeah.
I think the system's good. We talked about that last time, where, it's still a pretty, I mean, it can definitely get hard at times, but if you're not perfect, you can still,
you don't have
muddle
to be
through it.
perfect by any means.
You don't have to even get high combos. You can manage. But it, it's a, what's the term? It's only additive, as far as, like, if you get better at the system, it only makes it, feel better and maybe more fun or something. But it's not. You can still succeed with the basic sort of understanding of things. But there is different player types can accomplish different things with a number of options. But the one, going back to the sort of scale challenge, and that's why I'm really interested to play Night now, and I kick myself for not playing it, but I'm really interested to see what the apex of this game was for that studio and how far they went, because it's definitely a double-edged sword when you have too many things. It's just like, I don't know. Like, I was looking, so for instance, in this one, I think there's 260 Riddler things, I believe. If I look at the stats, or somewhere around there, 240.
Yeah, I think it's 240. Yeah.
I think they more than double that in City.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, yeah. I mean,
I definitely. I mean, I did
get it.
But like a dozen of them in. There's like, but there are only maybe. I say there's only like 200 of them in. Maybe
Origin.
220, 240 in Origins.
Oh, interesting.
Of the Riddler things. Although, to get the markers on your map, you need to go beat up his informants or something. So there's like this additional quest line to like help you even find them. And they are more elaborate. There's a lot, some of them.
So they obfuscated some of that.
Yeah. So they kind of hid them in some ways. Right. So it's an interesting.
Yeah, that's a clever trick.
Yeah.
To put it in layers so you don't feel like you're doing so many. But yeah, and the Riddler ones are an easy target. I think where I was going with, just like, when you're iterating on something like the combat system, it's easy to see how you can just keep adding and adding and adding, and at some point it's like, maybe the high end players are using all of that stuff, but at some point you're just like, I'm going to find something that works for me and I'm going to stick to it, because there's no way I can remember 12 things that I have at my disposal in a fight.
Right. Yeah. I mean, to that point, I've started playing a much more recent game, Doom Eternal, which I think is 2020, and having played the Doom reboot, which is around 2016, I want to say. And there's the gun. And that generally would be all for a Doom game. There's many of those guns, but it's a gun, and you shoot the gun. Well, of course, there's the health and the shields, right? Okay, that was in there. The other ones. Well, there's this flamethrower thing you've got on the face button up, so Y button or whatever on your Xbox controller. There's a frag grenade. There's another type of grenade called an ice bomb, which I've not even used. And like they all, And then there's the chainsaw move, there's the glory kill moves, and like all of these things have been layered on pretty quickly. And I'm constantly forgetting that, oh yeah, I can set things on fire just by hitting this button. Like I hit this button, not only will they be on fire, but that will give me more shields. So I want to do that.
Yeah.
And the game is really about mastering all these things. But in the moment, I just can't remember them all. And that's what starts to happen. I know, I mean, you can still, the thing about the Batman games, the Arkham games that I appreciate is that you can get through it without knowing. You can also kind of button mash, like, oh, I'm sure if I double tap R2, that does something. Like, I'm sure if I press L2 and R2 together, that does something. Like, you kind of like get a feel for what the game will let you do, and you can just kind of like flail at them. And so it is kind of nice that way, whereas Doom Eternal feels way more precise. I mean, it is a first-person shooter, so precision's kind of built into the game in a way. I don't know. It's just interesting to see other parallel games in that way, how they develop and add stuff, and what do they add, and how do they tie that together, and what's the resultant feel. So,
well, I mean, cognitive overload, right? Like there's a for I guess I'll say a majority of your players, there's a sweet spot for that.
Yeah.
And certain games I think dole it out in different ways, but I don't know, like Doom, I didn't finish the reboot. And Doom, like what you're describing to me kind of just makes me even more anxious.
Yeah, you wouldn't enjoy it. It's not,
because I'm just like, I'll be so overwhelmed. And I'm positive. I'm confident. I guess I'll say that I could improve in it and I could get to the point where I could finish it. But I just would be so anxious the whole time that I have to like plate spin so many plates while demons are attacking me.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I don't know if I want that.
It's extremely high pace. It's very, very, it's like, how fast can we make it?
Yeah, it's metal, right?
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, it really is. And I like that every now and again, but it's a lot, and you kind of get better at it, and then it stops and you're like, oh, what do I do with that now? What do I do with that energy?
Yeah, right. Don't play it before bed.
No, I play it actually. It's the thing I play in the morning.
Oh, great!
Before
work, you're like,
I've been doing some workouts on the treadmill desk, and it's a great game to play while I'm walking because I'm so focused that I barely notice that 2 hours have gone by and I've been walking, trotting right along at 3.5 miles an hour. So, it's good. It's good that way. Works for me. Anyway, let's talk about some of the other stuff. Let's see. We haven't talked much about, other than the sort of progression rewards. There are other rewards. We've talked about the sort of rewards where like you see the things as a Batman fan that you like in the game. The ones that I've really enjoyed have been finding the tapes of the interviews with the subjects. Which, are very descended from BioShock audio tapes. And of course, they weren't even the first ones, though they used them really well. Here, they're very similar to those. They aren't quite as good in implementation in my mind. My recollection of BioShock is like you picked it up, it started playing. You just heard it, or you could press a button, hear it start playing. And you could see the character who is speaking. Here, it actually takes you into the menu. And it starts playing, and it's like starts giving the transcript. And there's a bit of art as well, so you get the like a comic book, a more cartoony
there's a little extra,
character.
Too much extra stuff there.
Yeah, and those extra things don't.
Sometimes it stops for me, and sometimes it doesn't. So I'm kind of, I can't figure that out.
Yeah, I don't know either. It feels like it stops most of the time for me. You can back out just by hitting whatever circle a couple times, but
I mean, I don't. Yeah, I feel like I'm doing it the same way every time, but sometimes when I back out, it stops, and sometimes it doesn't. Like I continue playing, and it just keeps playing, which is what I prefer.
Oh yeah,
but
I think you must be doing something different, because I think it will keep playing if you just back out one particular way. But now I'm like, what is that way?
I'm just always hitting B. That's it, and then
that's weird. Yeah,
but they're
they
They're
deepen the
good.
characters that are there in most cases. Like you're learning more about Dr. Young as a character through those.
Mm-hmm.
You see her interactions with the Joker and Jack White and Harley, you know, and I mean, just all these different characters that are in there that are getting interviewed. You're getting Killer Croc is a character who you see physically a bunch. You know, you're going to get to his lair soon, but you don't really get a sense of Killer Croc other than, you know, vicious man-eater. That's kind of all. And then you get his tapes, which are like, it just takes you deeper into what that means. Without going too much further into it. It's just like, oh wow, that guy's really messed up. And it's a really, really dark. It's really, really dark what he does. You wouldn't necessarily think of that. And I like that aspect of like, oh, if Batman fails to Killer Croc, he gets eaten.
Yeah.
Which is not something I'd really put together. So, you know, it's stuff like that I appreciate a little bit of depth there. And those are great rewards for me. I really, I remember enjoying them the first time, and I'm enjoying them again this time. I had, you know, if you'd asked me about it, I wouldn't have said audio tapes. But they're here, and they're
some of the better ones out there. I think they're performed well. They're written well. I think they do too. You know, they fill in gaps that you, of course, are not going to get in just playing the rest of the game because again, they can't have cinematics for all of this stuff. So this is an economical way to do it. You get that backstory without having. You can opt into it. You know, you can just skip them if you want, but you can also opt into it. And then the other thing from a world building standpoint, which I'm always intrigued about, hit IP games like this one. Where because it was such a popular game, I know it wasn't just a popular game to Batman fans or people who are aware of Batman or the villains and stuff. And so I'm often curious, and maybe Warner Brothers has stats on this, but I'm often curious because this was so well implemented and it gives you so much world building and backstory to these characters. I wonder how many Batman fans this game made, you know, after somebody who came in not really knowing much about Batman other than maybe the films or something, or maybe not even that, but wanted to play the game because it was supposed to be good, and then finished the game and came out of it as somebody who, you know, would call themselves a fan. So I don't know. It's always an intriguing concept. Obviously, we dealt with it a lot in Star Wars and stuff, where you know you're going to have people coming in who don't know much about it. So how do you please the fans, but also bring in create new fans? So
yeah.
I don't know. And I think these are great.
Yeah, these are great way to do that. They do also tie. I mean, they are so well in it. All of these things are so well integrated because, of course, this is not only the characters; it's also telling you about this place, which is not a place I have any real association with. I mean, other than that's where they get locked up. Like, that's kind of my whole, like, oh, Arkham Asylum. Yeah, I heard of it. Like, that's how much I knew about Arkham Asylum before this game, or thought about it as a place. Like, seemed like not a particularly nice place to live. But, you know, you get a real deep sense of this place and the people who work there and all of that while you're in it. Plus, it's tied to the reward system. You find an interview tape, it's worth 100, 200 XP or whatever. You know, so you just like, it all just ties together. You know, it all fits really well together. One thing I will say about the economy of the RPG stuff that I was just thinking about in response to that is that I do think that the maximum multiplier you get on the combos ties into how much XP you get from the fights.
You're right. It does. It is a multiplier. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm wondering to what degree the economy of getting all the upgrades is pretty tight if you're not good at the combat. Like that, you'd have to find an awful lot, or maybe all of the combos. I mean, all of the side content. Mm-hmm. If you were to get all the gadgets, if you were not, I mean, I got them all a while ago, but I've done all the Riddler stuff. I usually get, you know, a double-digit combo, if it's a big enough combat, if there's enough guys. I punched all the plants that I could find, get a little bit of XP there. I mean, it's just like, and. So I had a lot of ways to max out. And without respawning enemies, then the economy might actually be a little tight for some players, which I always hate. Personally, I hate feeling like I might not have enough to get through it, to get everything, and have to play again if I were to need to, with a new game plus or something like that to max out the skill tree. So I don't know how I feel about that for a player who is not good at the combat, but maybe the baseline, maybe just getting through all the combats is enough. Cause I don't think it's a straight up multiplier. I think it's like, it's an additive, like, oh, you got up to times 10, you get another 120, or whatever, on top of what you did. I'd have to really examine it. Yeah. I don't think it is. Well, it may be linear, but I don't think it's a linear multiplier of the base, if you know what I mean. It's like, oh, look up this table, and that might be linear itself, that table. Like, 1 through 10 is, 12, 24, 36, 48. I mean, that's linear, but it's not based on the underlying combat XP.
Yeah, it's a hard problem to solve. I mean, it is coming down to economy tuning, and did they hit the sweet spot or not? And I guess it comes down to what their goals are. Like, if you think about it another way, well, so I guess using your example as a case study, because you got them all a while ago, and you might get double digits, but it doesn't sound like you're like a master at the combat.
No.
Like, if you're somebody who's more of an explorer or collector, there's a route to get all the upgrades. But if you're somebody who doesn't like to do that, but is really good at the combat, there's a route as well. You know what I mean? So maybe the goal was to provide different player types the ability to still max out or something like that. But if you,
I think there is the opportunity, but if you are, but there's a group in there. Like, if you just want to play the story, let's say.
Yeah. Right.
Right. I mean, if you're a person for whom the combat is difficult, but you really don't care about all the collectibles.
I wonder either.
There's no easier mode, I don't think. So it's like you're kind of, yeah.
Oh, is there? I
don't know. I don't think there is. I think it starts at normal and.
Oh, okay. That's what I was going to say. If there's,
I think it goes normal, hard, and then I think there might be another one above that. So. Oh no, there is an easy. I looked at the achievements, so there's an easy. This one has easy, normal, hard, but I don't think Origins does. So I'm confusing them again. I'm sorry.
Is there an achievement for each of them? Or I guess it's cumulative if you do the higher one.
Yeah, it's cumulative. So if you do, I think when I finish the game, I'll get easy and medium or easy and normal, and then I would have to play again to get hard.
Yeah, after the first session,
achievement,
I almost restarted on hard because I wanted to get the achievement.
You still can, my friend.
No, not too late. After the first session, I said. After that, I was like,
no. I mean, when you finish, then you just play again.
Yeah, that's fair.
If the combat will be a lot easier having done it. It'll go way faster if you do it now. So, yeah. Anyway, that's a thing. There was a new game plus option in Origins, and I hovered over it for a minute. I was like, I don't.
Those are so enticing for sure.
They are, but it's like I'm just gonna have all this stuff. But then what would I do? It's just all the same things I just did. Having all the stuff I don't know. It felt like I don't see that benefit.
Yeah, they tend to be fairly flat. They can be very flat, right? Because you're too powerful or what have you, and they level stuff up, but you're just too knowledgeable. So I really appreciate the games that mix up New Game Plus quite a bit, but not just a harder version with all your stuff, but I did want to mention really quickly to go back to the previous quick topic on the second Scarecrow sequence where you play.
Oh right, yeah. Sorry.
I mean, as a quick fan call out. Like, I've read the alley scene so many times in my life. I've seen it in so many films and TV, animated, whatever, but I never played it. you know, and I never got up as Bruce as a child from the alley scene and then had a shadow of a bat on the ground and then walk slowly, methodically, depressed down a hall while I heard, you know, James Gordon and Alfred or whomever was talking, you know, about like this kid, you know, and
I think it's Harvey Bullock actually.
Is it Bullock? Yeah.
Gordon and Bullock Bullock's like, whatever, they'll take him over to foster care, and Gordon's like, he's a good kid. Oh, he's got all that money. Bullock's like, he's got all that money, he'll be fine. It's like he just lost his parents.
The debate. But you know, it's a short scene and small thing, but didn't need to happen that way. I forgot about it until it happened. Like, you know, having played the game before, I would have thought I would have remembered that. I actually thought that there was something like this in City, to be honest. I must have confused the two. And then just like, it's the sort of thing that you didn't really need to do, but it was a nice sort of like, this game feels like a reboot in a way, right? Like almost like if you know nothing about Batman, this is a good game to play, you know, kind of thing. Like a spiritual reboot, even though it's a specific just story. And I guess in a way it's sort of reboot. It is a new tendril of Batman universes, because it does end up being its own sort of canon, so to speak. The Arkham canon, I think, is a separate line in the multiverse, blah, blah, blah. But it was just, you know, I just wanted to call it out as a clever, you know, not just fan service, but maybe mostly fan service. So just like, oh, wow, I'm in the alley. And I think in City, they actually do have the alley. You can go to the specific alley and the theater's there and everything, and you can go. And I think there's some Riddler stuff there. There's some quest or mission you do there. But the fact that this was a psychological part of one of Scarecrow's things, you know, is just another good reinforcement of like how messed up this dude is.
Yeah, it works pretty well. Origins is, it's funny. It was a little weird because it was doled out late, like it was basically post story. I was mopping up some things or thinking about mopping up some things, and there was one of those cases, you know, the detective things, where you can go and like, you go to a crime scene, you investigate the crime scene, and then you go find you have Alfred identify the location of the person who did it once you figured out who did it. And one of them is a couple killed in an alleyway, you know, wealthy, not a robbery in that case, which kind of leads to but it's sort of set up as like he's investigating something similar to how his parents were killed. In the investigatory mode. So it was kind of another nod, it felt like, even though it didn't represent it that way. I mean, he doesn't comment on it that way. He doesn't say this is like my parents, you know, it's like, he doesn't have a flashback or anything like that. It's much stronger in Arkham Asylum, but of course they had already done it in Arkham Asylum. So
it's tricky.
It's hard to do it again.
That's the challenge in the comics, is like, every time somebody brings it out, it's like, oh no, not again! Please stop. Are
you kidding? His uncle with the robber that he let go earlier in the evening?
Yeah.
With great power comes great responsibility. Yeah, we get it.
Yeah. So it's, you know, I think as far as the game space goes, like they did it here, let it be, kind of thing.
Yeah, agreed. And I think probably a good choice for that. Well, next time I think we'll finish this game and do our takeaways. I think we'll be able to fit those in together. We don't have any new emails this week. We're all caught up. But thanks for sending those in. You can send those in to devgameclub@gmail.com if you have other bat thoughts you'd like us to cover. We'll do our bat best. You just put bat in front of everything, right? That's how it works. I watched Batman 1966. That's how everything worked.
You watched it recently?
No, but I watched them all when I was a kid. So
okay.
I do remember.
No, that's then the show. I mean, as a kid, I was obsessed with the show too.
Yeah, it was a great show. You can also find us on the web at devgameclub.com, on Twitter, which I barely look at anymore, but it's still there at devgameclub. It's been 248 days since he last streamed, but you can find him at...
do this every time.
Yep, twitch.tv/
guilt.
Yes, twitch.tv/guilt, or twitch.tv/
Tim Longo Jr. with the JR at the end.
Thank you. That's how we do it here. We have a Discord. It's populated by lots of fans of the show. It's always some interesting discussions being had there of current events in game development, people talking about working on their own little side projects, various sorts of hardware stuff, particular machines and hobby things, and etc. It's a fun place to hang out in a couple times a week. You should check us out. There's a link in the show notes. Our intro and outro music was written and performed by Kirk Hamilton, commissioned by friend of the cast Aaron Evers. Our logo, that Discord, our merch store, all by Mark Garcia. Have fun staying vigilant, gamers, this week, and good night.
Good night.